Have you ever felt a type of tiredness that sleep can't solve? Have you ever looked at your own life and thought, why does it seem like something inside me has gone out? If, from the outside, my life continues to function, maybe you keep moving forward, keep showing up, keep doing what needs to be done. But inside, something feels strangely distant. Nothing dramatic, not something broken, just exhausted. Have you been feeling emotionally numb lately? You pray, but still feel disconnected? You talk to God, read the Bible, try to stay positive, and yet you still carry that silent feeling that something inside you doesn't respond the way it used to? And perhaps the hardest part is this. Sometimes you can't even explain it, because from the outside his life seems normal. You work, it's productive, smile, respond to messages, fulfill your responsibilities. But internally, it seems like her soul is working at its limit. And perhaps that's exactly where the confusion begins. Because what if you're not empty? What if you're exhausted? What if what you called spiritual weakness for so long is actually emotional exhaustion? What if what seems like distance from God isn't a lack of faith, but the burden of carrying too much for too long? Most people never stop to ask themselves that question. We live in a world that teaches us to keep going at all costs. Be strong. Continue. Don't complain. Be disciplined. Now, but produce more. And gradually, without realizing it, many people begin to ignore what is happening inside themselves. It becomes disconnected from emotions, vi esse desconectando, de esse mesma, until you start to believe that there is something wrong with spirituality itself. But what if your emotions are trying to tell you something? Psychology has been studying this for years. Emotional exhaustion, mental overload, emotional anesthesia, the way your mind tries to protect you when stress stops being a moment and becomes a way of life. And what's most interesting is that the Bible describes human experiences like these long before modern names for them existed. Think about that for a moment. What if what you're feeling is both a spiritual and a psychological explanation? What if your soul isn't failing you, but signaling something? Because sometimes suffering doesn't look like sadness. Sometimes it seems to keep working even though you feel disconnected. Praying without feeling, laughing without joy, resting without regaining energy, to exist without truly feeling present. And if any part of this seems familiar, know that you are not alone. Perhaps you are blaming yourself. Perhaps you are asking yourself questions that you never say out loud. Why am I still tired? Why do I feel distant? Why can't I feel God like I used to? And perhaps no one has been able to connect what happens inside you with what happens in your faith. But what you're about to discover might surprise you. Because sometimes the problem isn't that your faith has weakened. Sometimes your soul is simply carrying more than it was created to bear. And perhaps something important is happening right now. Perhaps as you listen to these words, you are realizing that what you called emptiness for so long was never absence. Perhaps it was due to accumulation. Too many days without a break. Too many thoughts without rest. Too many responsibilities carried in silence. There is something powerful when we finally find words for feelings we've carried for months, or even years. If any part of this video accurately describes what you're going through, write in the comments which part resonated with you the most so far. You don't need to write much. It could be a sentence. It could be a word. Because sometimes someone comes in here quietly, reads a comment, and realizes they're not the only person going through this. And this exchange matters. This space exists precisely to remind us that faith and emotions don't need to be at war. And now that we're beginning to realize that not all inner silence means absence, there's an even deeper question. How can you tell if what you're feeling is just tiredness, or if your soul is trying to tell you something you haven't been able to hear yet? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is a silent and extremely important difference between being empty and being exhausted. And many people go years without realizing this. Perhaps you've begun to believe that you've lost your zest for life. Perhaps you think it has lost its purpose, that its faith had diminished. Something is wrong inside you because what used to excite you no longer has the same impact. But is that the whole truth? One of the greatest emotional confusions of our time is interpreting exhaustion as a lack of meaning, and that changes everything. Not always does ceasing to feel mean ceasing to believe. Losing heart doesn't always mean losing your purpose. Sometimes it just means that your mind and soul are trying to survive the excess. When someone remains in a state of alert for too long, the mind tries to protect what little energy it has left. And sometimes she does this by toning down the intensity of her emotions. That's why some people start to feel less joy, less connection, less presence, not because they stopped loving what they loved, but because they are tired. Maybe you wake up, grab your phone, answer messages, keep appointments, have normal conversations with people, and only realize at night that another whole day has passed without you really feeling like you were present. That's scary, because it seems disconnected. But often it's overload. Your brain is saying, I need to slow down. Your soul is saying, I need to breathe. And perhaps someone needs to hear this today. Your mind may not be broken. She may just be overwhelmed. But when nobody understands this, another battle begins. To blame. It's because I'm tired. The guilt of thinking you should feel more than you are able to feel. The guilt of looking at other people and thinking, why do they seem so strong and I don't? And then the silent comparison begins. If I had more faith, if I prayed more, if I were spiritually strong. But there's a truth that is rarely spoken. Spiritual maturity has never meant the absence of human limitations. The Bible never hid that. Strong people get tired too. Even people used by God have reached their limit. After some great moments, some want to stop. Some have described a broken soul, and there were those who sought silence and rest. This completely changes the perspective, because it means that exhaustion is not automatically spiritual failure. And perhaps one of the most unfair ideas we've learned is believing that feeling tired means being distant from God. Maybe not. Perhaps it is precisely in these moments that we discover that we were raised with limitations. And perhaps there's a part that's hard to admit. Sometimes it seems that prayer doesn't reach that weary place within us. You pray, and you're still tired. The search remains distant, but an exhausted mind processes everything differently. This does not mean the absence of God. It means your whole being is asking for restoration, because prayer was never created to replace rest. Often she leads us to them. And perhaps healing begins less when we try to overcome our humanity, and more when we stop fighting against it. Perhaps the first step isn't demanding more of yourself. Perhaps it's about acknowledging what's happening without judgment. Realize which burdens you continue to carry unnecessarily. Create moments where you don't need to prove anything. Reclaiming spaces of silence. Learning again that presence is worth more than performance. So I want to leave you with a question. What if what you call emptiness is actually your soul asking for care? What is draining your energy? Will you keep carrying around alone? How long has it been since you had a real rest? Because perhaps transformation isn't about learning to endure more. Perhaps it's about finally understanding what shouldn't be carried alone. And perhaps, after everything we discussed here today, I just want to leave you with one last thought. Not all inner silence signifies absence. Not all tiredness means failure. Not every feeling of distance means a lack of faith. Sometimes what seemed like emptiness was exhaustion. Sometimes what seemed like a lack of purpose was just a soul asking for space to breathe. If this video managed to put into words something you felt but had never been able to explain, then it has already served an important purpose. Because understanding what happens inside us can be the beginning of a real transformation, not based on guilt, not even performance, but in truth, conscience, and restoration. If you've made it this far and feel that this type of content helps you see your emotions in the light of the Bible and better understand what's going on inside you, consider subscribing to the channel, because this conversation continues. And perhaps the next video will be exactly the continuation of the answer you were looking for. And if you stayed until the end, leave a comment below. That message was for me. Because sometimes the first step to breathing again is realizing that you're not carrying all of this alone.